half of what you see, none of what you hear, even if it's spat by me, your man Louie T. It's Lyin season. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to my 2023 NFL Mock Draft Lyin season edition. You know what it is. It's Lyin season. Believe half of what you see, none of what you hear, even if it's spat by me, your man, Louie T. I got to tell you, I misspoke a couple of weeks ago on my podcast when I said, this draft isn't as exciting. It's kind of ho-humish. That was before the Texans decided to stir things up. Okay, now all of a sudden, this draft is as unpredictable as I can recall in recent memory. Now, we've had some drafts where we weren't quite sure what was going to happen, at the top, number one overall. Usually that's when a quarterback isn't involved, right? When there's quarterbacks involved, generally there's a consensus on who the number one guy is, and that guy's going to go number one. It's when you don't have a dominant quarterback or two in that particular draft class, i.e. last year, where you're not quite sure. Remember, we had some conversations about number one overall last year, and then there was clarity about a week out from the draft, and there was this momentum for the edge rusher from Georgia that the Jaguars eventually took. It was Aiden Hutchinson probably for 2/3 of the draft period. And then right at the end, the Georgia edge rusher, Trayvon Walker, snuck up and took the number one pick. But we weren't surprised by that. I think I got the first 5 picks right last year. I never get that many picks right in my mock draft. But I got like the first 5 right last year because it was so easy. That's not the case this year. We do know who number one is. Right? But after that, all bets are off. I mean, anything can happen. Anything can happen in the top 10. And then I think there's going to be a little bit of movement after the top 10. So this is going to be a fun draft. I'm looking forward to it. And so I'm not necessarily looking for a high hit rate this year. In past years, I'm just looking to debunk some of these, theories out there, these notions. It's a lot of lying going on, man. The Lyin season, rhetoric that I spit every year, it's in full effect this year. There's been a lot of things that have been leaked to the media because teams have agendas, and I'm here to debunk some of those. I may end up being wrong, and a lot of the shit that's out there may ultimately be legit. I'm calling their bluff right now with my Lyin season edition of my 2023 NFL Mock Draft. So this is going to be a little bit different because this is what I think should happen more so than what I think ultimately will happen. There is still a good mixture of what I think will happen, but I'm interjecting my opinion a little bit more than I normally do. Normally, I'm more so thinking like the team. 90% of it is what I think is going to happen, what I think these teams are going to do, and then 10% is what I think should happen. I think this year it's more like 70% what I think is going to happen and 30% what should happen, which is a lot, but that's how I'm feeling. I'm in my feelings this year, and the mock draft is going to reflect that. So with that said, let's get the party started. I don't need to waste a ton of time. The Carolina Panthers made it abundantly clear when they traded up from number 9 to number 1 that they were coming up to get their signal caller of the future. The question was it going to be C.J. Stroud or was it going to be Bryce Young? We've already determined that guy is Bryce Young. The Panthers are denying it, but there's no denying the truth. And the truth is the Carolina Panthers traded up to number 1. They've done their homework. They've done their due diligence, and they've figured out which guy is above the rest in the draft class. And I think they got it right. I thought they were going to get it wrong. I thought they were going to go with C.J. Stroud. And I was wrong about that. And I'm glad to be wrong because Bryce Young is the best quarterback in this draft class. And so with the number 1 pick overall in the 2023 NFL draft, the Carolina Panthers select Panthers get on the board, number 1 overall pick, Bryce Young, quarterback, Alabama, to get this draft started. Now, we go to the number 2 pick, and this is when all hell breaks loose. And from here on out, the draft is just going to be a crapshoot. It's going to be anarchy at this point because the Texans have sent this thing into a tizzy with the news that they weren't blown away by any of the quarterbacks in this draft class. Pretty much what they're saying is they wanted Bryce Young, because they weren't talking this nonsense when C.J. Stroud was the projected number 1 overall pick. It only started once they realized, damn, Carolina's going to take the guy that we want, And we really don't care for any of these other guys necessarily, not at number 2 at least. We think there are other players that are more talented than the rest of these quarterbacks. And so maybe we're not as interested in a C.J. Stroud and a Will Levis and an Anthony Richardson at number 2. Maybe we're more comfortable with a Hendon Hooker at 12 instead of a C.J. Stroud at 2. Maybe that is the case. However, I'm not buying the bullshit, okay? I'm not buying the chicanery. The Texans can't be that stupid. They can't be that dumb to think that it's okay to pass on an opportunity to get a franchise signal call. Now, again, if you don't love a guy, and maybe that is the case, they don't love C.J. Stroud. If you don't love a guy, then don't take him. I get it. But you're in a great position. You could have been in a better position had you just not won in Week 18 against the Indianapolis Colts. You could have been in an even better position, and you would have been able to take Bryce Young. But instead, you're in number 2. And you had a chance to trade up to number 1. You refused to do so, and I don't blame you. You didn't want to give up the draft capital to go up to number 1, so you must not have loved Bryce Young as much as you said you did. Maybe you felt like, hey, maybe they're going to come up here and take C.J. Stroud, and we don't have to do anything, whatever the case may be. You're telling everyone that will listen, hey, our pick is open for business. If you want C.J. Stroud, he's yours. You can come up and get him. We don't love any of these quarterbacks. We still got another pick at 12. If a quarterback's there that we like, we'll take that guy. Hey, if you're in the top 10 and you're really interested in C.J. Stroud, a.k.a. the Las Vegas Raiders, any, Falcons, any of you teams that are a little bit further back in the top 10 and you're interested, hit my line. And I'm saying, Texans, cut the bullshit. Cut your nonsense, okay? Stop. No, seriously, stop. All right. Take the quarterback, okay? Stop the foolishness. Stop the nonsense. Let's get the process started. You don't take a quarterback this year and you're banking on being bad enough to get either Drake May or Caleb Williams. Who's to say what happens? Case Keenum comes in there, you win 6 games, and all of a sudden you're in a position where you got to trade up. But guess what? The top 2 teams in the draft need quarterbacks. You're not getting up to 1 or 2. Then what? Let's not go down the Davis Mills route where you take a guy in the 2nd or the 3rd round. Let's try to nip this thing in the butt. All right. So with the 2nd overall pick in the 2023 NFL draft, the Houston Texans select So the Texans do the right thing, like Spike Lee. They do the right thing and they select a quarterback in Bryce Young out of the Ohio State University as the 2nd overall pick in the draft, and put all of the rumors to bed that had surfaced throughout this process. Were they shopping the pick? Maybe. Did they get any takers, any offers? Maybe they got some, but weren't blown away by the offer. Could they take a defender here? Sure. Do the right thing. Take the quarterback. So now you get to the 3rd overall pick with the Arizona Cardinals. And this, I told you, all process long, this is a hot pick. Hot pick. A hot pick. It's on fire. A hot pick. A hot pick. It's a hot pick. It could get even hotter if the Texans decide to do something crazy like pass on C.J. Stroud. It could get even hotter. But even with that said, 3 is a hot spot because there's still 2 quarterbacks in particular that teams are interested in the top 10, and Will Levis and Anthony Richardson. And there are phone calls, and the Cardinals are fielding all calls, okay? And so Indianapolis has played it cool this entire time. They've pretty much said, hey, we're good with the quarterbacks that are in this draft, and one of them will fall to us, and we're not tripping, and we really don't have a preference. Then it comes out that, oh, man, Indy would really prefer it if somebody came up and got C.J. Stroud if the Texans don't take him, because then they won't have to feel obligated to take C.J. Stroud because they really want Will Levis. Really? You want Will Levis over C.J. Stroud? Stop, man. Stop playing with me. Like, if that ain't the biggest smoke screen in recent memory, I don't know what is. So you're telling me that you absolutely love Will Levis. You're head over heels for him to the point where if it's not Bryce Young, it needs to be Will Levis. So you want him more so than C.J. Stroud, the kid that played right up the road at Ohio State in Columbus. You want Will Levis, the mayo drinking coffee Will Levis that, or the coffee drinking with mayo in it Will Levis over Anthony Richardson. That's what you're telling me. Okay, cool. I don't buy it. I'm calling your bluff. I'm pulling your card. That was all foolishness to try to get someone to feel like Will Levis is the guy so they could come up and C.J. Stroud could fall right into your lap. Well, the Texans took care of that. And if the Texans don't take care of it, more likely than not, someone's going to like, hey, whatever you talking about, that's cool. We still coming up to get C.J. Stroud. Don't nobody want Will Levis's ass. You don't even want Will Levis. And guess what the Cardinals just picked up the phone and said to you? Hey, I'm going to keep it a buck with you. All right? I just got a call from the Titans. And the Titans are trying to move up to 3. And they're coming up to get Anthony Richardson, bro. What you trying to do? I know you said you like Will Levis. So if you cool with that, I'm going to make the deal. But I'm just giving you an opportunity. You've got the first right of refusal. Why? Because I don't want to move all the way back to 11 if I don't have to. If I could just move back to 4, I'll still get the guy that I would have taken if I had to make a pick at 3, and everybody wins. I get more draft capital. I get the best defensive player in the draft. You get your quarterback. Everybody wins. But if you're not trying to move up, let me know. I'll make the deal with the Titans, and we can just move on. And the Colts was like, yo, do what you got to do. And the Cardinals was like, cool, all right, man. I tried to give you a chance. Oh, okay. All right. The Colts tried to pull, their card and tried to call their bluff. And the Cardinals was like, all right, cool. I'm about to make the deal with the Titans. And the Colts was like, okay, hold on. All right, I'll trade you the 3rd pick for the 4th pick. And so we got our first draft trade. Incoming! So the Indianapolis Colts trade from 3 or 4 to 3. Cardinals move back a spot. They had to block the Tennessee Titans because the Titans were coming up. They were hard charging and they were looking to come up and get their guy. And that guy just happened to be the guy that the Colts wanted all along, knowing that they weren't going to get C.J. Stroud, knowing that they weren't going to get Bryce Young. Anthony Richardson was their guy the entire time. And had they not traded up, the Titans would have snatched him up. Thus, with the 3rd pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, the Indianapolis Colts select Anthony Richardson, quarterback, Florida. So for the second time in 3 years, 3 quarterbacks go 1, 2, and 3 in the draft. So it had never happened prior to 2021. And now it's happened twice in the last 3 years. So big time stuff. Now we go to number 4. The Arizona Cardinals are on the clock. And they just traded back out of 3. And this was a perfect scenario for them. Didn't have to go back too far. They still get what they perceive to be the best defensive player in this year's draft class. And they picked up a little bit of draft capital in the process. So it's a win-win for the Arizona Cardinals. Don't need to overthink this pick. Whomever you feel like is the best defensive player in this draft, you take him now. It's probably Jalen Carter. You've already proven you don't have the infrastructure to deal with a Jalen Carter. Don't even know if he's even a guy that needs a great infrastructure, but why even risk it, right? Take the best, safest guy in the draft with the highest production in college football over the last 3 years. It's an easy no-brainer here, slam dunk for the Arizona Cardinals. With the 4th overall pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, the Arizona Cardinals select Will Anderson, edge rusher, Alabama. So now we move on to number 5, and this was a pick that was highly debated. And the Seattle Seahawks were definitely considering a quarterback here. And the only guy that they were considering outside of C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young was Anthony Richardson. Well, he's already gone. They really don't love Will Levis, so They're not interested in Will Levis. But if Richardson were here, this would have been the pick for the Seattle Seahawks. Remember, Geno Smith came to his press conference, gave us the whole spiel about, look, I'll mentor whomever you want me to, and the Seahawks, this entire process has been very aggressive in meeting with these quarterbacks. So they were definitely interested, but the guy that they targeted that they thought would be here isn't. And so they go to plan B, and it's a damn good plan. And I just talked about a guy that needed an infrastructure that would fit his, maybe his personality, maybe, some of the off the field stuff, maybe the on the field stuff. This is a guy that got in a couple of scraps pre-game with the opposition. So there's some things going on there with him, but I can't think of a better situation for him than Seattle. They get guys that seem to be malcontents or guys that nobody else wants and get them to play, be themselves. That's what you always hear about the culture in Seattle, is we get to be ourselves. Well, I think this is the perfect spot for the most talented player in this year's draft class. This is actually tremendous value if you're the Seattle Seahawks, and you get to do it again if you're Seattle, because you got 2 first-rounders this year, and the first of which is going to be spent on, with the 5th overall pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, the Seattle Seahawks select Jalen Carter, defensive lineman, Georgia. So now we get to the 6th overall pick, and this is the Detroit Lions, and what a season it was for them last year. After starting off 1-6, they finished the season on a blistering pace, win their final 7 out of 9 games, finish the season up at 9-8. Just miss out on the postseason due to the Detroit Lions, but not because of a lack of effort. They go on the road in Week 18 with nothing to play for after Seattle took care of business just an hour or two before. And Green Bay had everything to play for. They were at home. Green Bay wins, they're in, and Detroit goes in and beats their division rival, knocking them from playoff contention in the process. So it was a hell of a season, and it's one of those culture building, tenure-defining seasons for head coach Dan Campbell, because before that turnaround at 1-6, it seemed like this was going to be another one of these failed, Lyin coaches, and he's not out of the woods yet. But that was a huge step in the right direction. And what they've built last year, we watched them on Hard Knocks, and you kind of saw that stuff come into fruition as the season progressed. They talked about toughness, and grit is one of their words, right? One of their buzzwords. And that's a tough football team, and they do things the right way. And, when you're talking about, and I know this is cliche now and it's old, and I think Lions fans are tired of hearing about biting off kneecaps and things of that nature, but when you talk about physicality, that's what the Lions were last year. They were physical. That's why you had the leading touchdown rusher in the NFL last year, Jamal Williams, because they were physical up front. They beat teams up at times. Unfortunately, they weren't as good on the defensive side, specifically beating teams up, but they were able to do that. And I think they want to get a little bit more physical on the defensive side of the football, and they're working towards that. They need to get better in the secondary, and they've done some things in free agency, but they're not done yet. And I think here they're going to make another statement. They signed Cam Sutton from the Pittsburgh Steelers in free agency. They're going to make another statement. They traded Jeff Okudah, so they've created space and a need now at corner, and I think they address that here. They've got 2 picks in the first round this year as well, and they're going to address that position with the first of those 2 first rounders here with the 6th overall pick in the 2023 NFL Draft. The Detroit Lions select Devon Witherspoon, cornerback, Illinois. So the first corner is now off the board. We get to the Las Vegas Raiders at number 7, and it's been an interesting offseason. No more Derek Carr in Vegas. They've turned over the roster a bit. They seem to be going in a different direction. You don't know what's going to happen. They bring in Jimmy Garoppolo. He's the presumed starter, but for how long? Okay, Jimmy signed a long-term deal this offseason, but there's an exit ramp after year 1. Okay, so for those of you out there thinking that they just signed Jimmy Garoppolo, they're not going to do anything at quarterback, you're wrong. There's an opportunity for them to get out of the Jimmy Garoppolo business after a year. Okay, now will they do it? Don't know. All right. However, there's an opportunity. There's an exit ramp, and Jimmy Garoppolo has not been healthy. I don't know if you've been keeping track of Jimmy Garoppolo's career over the last 5 years since he's hit San Francisco. Hasn't been the healthiest of quarterbacks. Last year missed a significant amount of time and had surgery the offseason prior. And so he's been banged up. So we'll see what they decide to do. But in my mind's eye, Raiders have been very aggressive, just like Seattle was in the quarterback circuit this offseason, really putting in a lot of work to try to get to know these quarterbacks. And I think the one that's still remaining fits what they're looking for. If Josh McDaniels were still in New England, this is the type of quarterback he would approach Bill Belichick and would vouch for as a guy that they could develop and get in and turn into a big-time NFL quarterback. And so I see Josh McDaniels looking at this next guy and saying, hey, I can turn this guy into a star. We'll see if that's the case or not. But the opportunity has presented itself, and the Raiders are not going to pass it up. And so, with the 7th overall pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, the Las Vegas Raiders select Will Levis, quarterback, Kentucky. So with that, 4 quarterbacks taken in the first 7 picks of the draft. We knew the quarterback position was going to dominate the top 10. Didn't know to what extent. Now we know 4 quarterbacks, top 7 selections. So now we get to number 8 with the Atlanta Falcons. And it's been an interesting offseason for the Falcons. They've actually done some good things with their roster. They've had some really good additions to their football team, specifically on the defensive side. Jesse Bates III and guys like that, Daniel Onyemata. They've done some things. Caden Ellis. They've done some things defensively to try to strengthen that side of the football. Offensively, they were one of the better rushing teams in football last year. But nothing matters if your quarterback position is unsettled. They're going to give Desmond Ridder, a guy they spent a 3rd-round pick on last year, an opportunity to be the full-time starter this year. They went out and got Taylor Heineke in free agency to back him up. I am of the mindset that Taylor Heineke will see the field relatively early for the Atlanta Falcons. I'm saying week 7 or 8 because of ineffectiveness from Desmond Ridder. I could be wrong. We'll see what happens with Desmond Ridder. They seem to like him a lot. Either they know something we don't. Either they're, setting themselves up for a high draft pick next year, which no team goes, because if you're Arthur Smith, you can't set up anything because you'll get fired, right? You can't be 3-14 and expect to be here to draft another guy and develop that guy. You don't get it done this year if you're Arthur Smith, you're probably on the chopping block. So there's none of that, in place. Falcons could have moved up in the draft if they so choose to address quarterback. They're going to roll with their guy. We'll see what they decide to do. But right now, it's all about getting the best value out of the pick. You're not getting a quarterback now, obviously, and you've addressed some of the issues on your team. You traded for cornerback Jeff Okudah, so corner is off the board for now. I think you can still address corner a little bit later on in the draft, but you don't have to address it here at number 8 now. Receiver is something that I think you still need to address. You don't need to do it here, though, okay? You did in the first round at this exact same pick last year. You don't need to do it again this year. So with that said, the next biggest, or probably the biggest need, and it's been a big need in Atlanta for a while, it seems like. It feels like they haven't had real edge rushers since like 2000 and, I don't know, 7, 6, 7, 8, something like that. Like John Abraham. That's the last time with John Abraham and maybe Patrick Kearney. I can't remember them actually having legitimate edge rushers. They've tried. They've went out and got guys, Vic Beasley, and they've thrown darts at the board, Dante Fowler Jr. They've all failed. All right. Let's see if they can't get it right this time. Last year, they drafted Arnold Ebiketie out of Penn State, and we'll see what happens with him as a second rounder. You still need to add more to that position, and I think you do it with the guy that you perceive to be one of the best, if not the best, edge rusher in this year's draft class. And so with the 8th overall pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, the Atlanta Falcons select Tyree Wilson, edge rusher, Texas Tech. So now we get to the Bears. And remember, the Bears we're the #1 overall pick in this year's draft class. Still kind of flummoxed at how that even happened. They pretty much had a healthy quarterback situation all year long. I think Justin Fields might have missed a game or two max, but for the most part, they had their guys playing. They just sucked. They just didn't win enough games. It's crazy because they had that one stretch where they were scoring a bunch of points and winning some games, went to New England, beat the brakes off the Patriots, scored a bunch of points against Dallas, even though that was in a losing effort. They had another game where I think they scored a bunch of points and won. They had a stretch there where you're like, hey, man, Justin Fields is tearing shit up. He's running for 200 yards every week. This is crazy. And they still only managed to win 3 games. It's amazing, actually. But they had their quarterback. Justin Fields proved to them that at least he's worthy of holding on to and continuing to build around him. So they trade back, get DJ Moore, pick up some draft capital for the future. And now they're in the position to do something that is a necessary evil. And that is add to their offensive line to protect Justin Fields, something they did not do adequately enough last season. And so they've been adding resources into the offensive line. They're going to add another resource into the offensive line now. And to me, this is probably the best pick of the top 10 in terms of fit for a team, because you're getting the best offensive lineman, and it's not close. He's the best, most technically sound offensive lineman in this year's draft class, and you've got a gaping hole on the left side of your offensive line at guard. Well, now you've got your left guard of the future for many years to come. And if you're the Bears, I don't know if it could have gone any better for you than this. With the 9th overall pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, the Chicago Bears select Peter Skoronski, offensive lineman, Northwestern. And I'd say give him a whirl at left tackle if you want at first and see how he does there. And if you're not satisfied with the results, kick him inside, and I guarantee you're going to have a Pro Bowl player at guard with Peter Skoronski. So now you get to number 10. And old dirty-ass Howie Roseman, up to his normal tricks. And so Eagles have 2 first-round picks. When don't the Eagles have 2 first-round picks? I got to give credit where credit is due. Howie Roseman is a wheeling and dealing son of a bitch. And he's at it again. He did it again. He's sitting there at 10. He realizes who's sitting behind him, and it puts him in the driver's seat. And Howie gets in the whip, and he starts doing his thing. And phone starts ringing. Titans were trying to go up to number 3 to get Anthony Richardson. That fell through. There's been rumors about them trading for Trey Lance. That's an emergency plan only, right? There are guys in this draft that they're interested in Tennessee. Plan A was to go get Anthony Richardson, all right? He could sit behind Tannehill for a year, learn, you get better. You got Malik Willis as his backup quarterback moving forward. So that's a great little tandem that you've got already in Tennessee. You've set it up perfectly. If anything happens to Anthony Richardson, Malik Willis can run that exact same offense. So it's the perfect fit. Well, the Colts got scared that you were going to take their guy from them. They went up and got him, blocked you. Okay, it happens. Family business, you know how it goes. So then plan B is Hendon Hooker. He can do a lot of the same things. Not as, dynamic, but can throw the deep ball. He can get things done. Again, sit behind Ryan Tannehill. He's right in your backyard at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. So you know him really well, and you're comfortable with him. That's plan B. Well, there are other teams that really like Hendon Hooker too. And Howie Roseman's like, I think I can make something happen here. I don't have to take a guy at 10. We cool. Our roster's pretty much set. We could use some stuff, but I ain't tripping. It ain't nothing here that's going to keep me here. I'm not compelled to make a pick here. Phone starts ringing. Howie starts doing his thing. Next thing you know, incoming! It's a trade. What's new? It's Howie Roseman wheeling and dealing like Kevin Nealon. And so, with that said, here comes the Minnesota Vikings all the way up from 22, or 23 rather, to number 10. You know what this is. It's a stick-up. It's a QB stick-up. They've had their eye on Hendon Hooker the entire time. When this process started, they didn't think they would have to do this. He was supposed to fall right into their lap at 23. No one was talking about Hendon Hooker as a first-round pick when this process started. Then as this thing moseyed along, and teams got to talk to him at the combine, and then they showed up at the Tennessee Pro Day. A lot of talent in Tennessee this year. For the first time in a long time, the Volunteers have a ton of talent. They're going to have multiple first-rounders this year. And Hendon Hooker, wowed and impressed again, and all of a sudden you turn on the tape and you say, you know what? This guy's got something. Vikings are ready to get out of the Kirk Cousins business. Whoever takes Hendon Hooker, you take him with the understanding that at least the first 6 to 8 games of the season, you don't want to see this kid on the field because you want to allow him to fully heal, similar to Tua and his hip, his rookie season with the Dolphins. If you've got a Tannehill, if you've got a team, like Seattle with Geno Smith, perfect fit for a Hendon Hooker. The Vikings have Kirk Cousins. It's a perfect fit. So, with the 10th pick overall in the 2023 NFL Draft, the Minnesota Vikings. Hendon Hooker, quarterback, Tennessee, and just like that, 5 quarterbacks go in the top 10 of the 2023 NFL Draft. What a whirlwind. So now, the Titans sitting there twiddling their thumbs, didn't get Anthony Richardson at 3, didn't get Hendon Hooker at 11, and they're saying, what the hell? So they're probably going to have to take the Trey Lance route now. I mean, that's the only option left. It's not a bad option if their GM Rand Carthen really truly believes in Trey Lance. It's just, it's not as sexy as these other guys that would have given you a 5-year window to figure out if they're good or not. With Lance, 2 years have already expired, and you've only got 3 years to figure out if he's any good. And now he's got to learn your system, and it's a lot of moving parts. I get that stuff. But anyway, what can you do? You can't cry over spilt milk. That's the NFL Draft, all right? Shit happens. Figure it out. You move on. So you're just going to move on as if, hey, got Tannehill. We got us a receiver last year. We got rid of Robert Woods in the offseason. Receiver was never good anyway, right? When you had A.J. Brown, you really didn't have enough, but at least you had A.J. Brown. Now, without A.J. Brown, you did get a receiver last year, out of Arkansas, I forget his name. It'll come to me. He was solid when he was healthy. I wasn't the biggest fan of his initially, but he showed me some things. And as the season progressed and he got healthier, obviously that Green Bay game was eye-opening for me. Got to stay healthy, but there's something there. He's the big physical possession guy. You need a guy that can separate and not the fastest guy in the world, but he's the best separator in this year's draft class, and it's not close. And so that's what Robert Woods was supposed to provide you last year. That's what you're going to get this year with your first-round pick. It's a good one. And you're going to pop the top on the position, which means you got what you perceive to be the best one in this year's draft class. The 11th pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, the Tennessee Titans select Jackson Smith-Njigba, wide receiver, the Ohio State University. So now we go to number 12 overall. And looky here. It's the Houston Texans. Made a selection at 2. There was a lot of hubbub about what they were going to do. Were they going to take a defensive player? Were they going to trade out of the pick altogether? Were they going to take Will Levis? They took C.J. Stroud. They did the right thing like Spike Lee. So now, got the quarterback out of the way. It's been an interesting offseason, similar to the last 2 where you've kind of overhauled the roster. A lot of short 1-year, 2-year deals for guys. And so everything's starting to kind of come into focus a bit. I'm starting to see the bigger picture. It's taken a while, right? Trade Brandon Cooks, pick up some draft capital there. You're starting to get things where you need it to be. Defensively, I've liked what you've done in the secondary, all right? Took a corner, number 2 overall last year. You took a safety in the second round. Both of those players, I think, have tremendous upside and ceilings. You bring in Jimmy Ward because your new head coach came from San Francisco and wants a guy that he can trust on that back end to kind of get everybody aligned. So you bring in Jimmy Ward, so that's a good veteran presence to go along with some of the youth you have back there. Got some stuff at linebacker. I don't necessarily love any of it, but it's okay, right? Defensive line-wise, though, it's solid. Nothing earth-shattering, but I like the fact that you have some veteran pass rushers, most notably the veteran pass rusher from Buffalo that played for you last year that showed me that he had a little bit left in the tank. All right, he's still rushing at a high level. And Hughes, right? What better guy to mentor a young pass rusher than Jerry Hughes? You need a pass rusher. You need someone to give you some more juice off the edge. I think you see a guy that I perceive to be the most natural pass rusher in this year's draft class. There's a lot of guys with more upside than him. A lot of guys with more juice and more explosion, more power. But there isn't another rusher in this year's draft class with more move variance, more tools in the tool belt. He's one of the longer pass rushers as well. So there's a lot to like here. The last time I made a statement like this was when the Titans took Landry out of Boston College in the second round. When they took Carl Landry. And look what he turned into. I'm saying it again here. Most natural pass rusher in this year's draft class. I think the Texans see it. And they're going to snatch him up right here. The 12th overall pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, the Houston Texans select So now you go to number 13, the New York Jets. A lot has been made of their offseason. They've done some things. Their owner came out and said, we're a veteran quarterback away. That told you all you needed to know about the future of Zach Wilson there. He was abysmal last year. Pretty much cost them an opportunity at going to the playoffs. Mike White is now in Miami behind Tua. And so the quarterback position is kind of in flux there. And we know they're getting Aaron Rodgers, okay? It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, okay? What's it going to cost you, and when are you going to pull the trigger on that? I've already told you it's going to be on draft night, okay? So that's the thing. Aaron Rodgers was already recruiting guys to come to New York with him. He tried to get the defensive tackle, Calais Campbell, who ended up signing in Atlanta with the Falcons, tried to get him to come to New York with him. And so he's going to New York. If Aaron Rodgers is going to New York, you better do what you did, or you better give him the Tom Brady treatment and roll out. Roll out that offensive line red carpet, like the Buccaneers did. First year they got Brady, they went out and they drafted an offensive lineman in the first round. Traded up to do it, as a matter of fact, to ensure that they got their guy. Okay, and he's been damn good since they got him too. All right, at right tackle. And so you're going to do the exact same thing. If you're planning on winning a Super Bowl with an old-ass quarterback, you better protect him. And so they've invested resources, all right? Vera Tucker and the big tackle a couple of years ago in the first round. They've invested resources. They got to do it again. They got to do it again. And I think there's a guy that they really, truly like. He's athletically gifted. He's a little raw, rough around the edges, but they can clean that up. You got Becton, you got Vera Tucker, and now you've got this guy with the 13th overall pick in the 2023 NFL Draft. The New York Jets select Broderick Jones, offensive lineman, Georgia. So now you go to the 14th pick, and it's the New England Patriots. And lots been made of this pick because the Patriots have been known to think outside of the box. I don't think they're in a position to do that anymore. You don't have Tom Brady anymore. You don't have Josh McDaniels as your offensive coordinator. You're not allowed to think outside the box anymore. You got to do the smart thing now. Them getting a real offensive coordinator this offseason, I think, was the best thing that they could do. You know, going out and getting Bill O'Brien, I think will do wonders for Mac Jones. There was a lot of conversation around Mac Jones and were the Patriots giving up on him. They were tied to Lamar Jackson, were the Patriots. They were tied to a number of quarterbacks, including trading up to potentially get a quarterback in this year's draft class. All of those things have been, mentioned and rumbled, in rumblings and grumblings, and ultimately cooler heads prevailed because I think they understand that was a train wreck last year. Having two guys, around the offensive coordinator position, not really settling in on one. It was a mess. So they've cleaned that up. And what I've learned about Bill Belichick over the years is there's only one thing that he loves more than his mullet-wielding crotch fruit. That's a cornerback, an elite lockdown cornerback, okay? They re-signed their corner in free agency. I like the Jack Jones kid that they drafted last year. All of that is cool. But Bill Belichick isn't passing up an opportunity to get what he perceives to be the best corner in this year's draft class. No way, no how. Now, he's going to have to tackle better. But from a technical standpoint, you're not going to find one better in this year's draft class. And there's no way in hell the Patriots are going to let this guy pass them by. With the 14th pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, the New England Patriots select Christian Gonzalez, cornerback, Oregon. So now you get to the 15th pick in the Green Bay Packers, and they haven't traded Aaron Rodgers yet, but they're going to trade Aaron Rodgers. Jordan Love's the Jordan Love era is going to begin this year in Green Bay. They've turned the page, or they will turn the page, I think, on draft night with Aaron Rodgers. They have until day 2 of the draft to get this thing done with the Jets. And I think it will get done on day number 2. Either day number 2 or day 1 after the Jets make their first round selection. I've heard that the Packers only want a second round pick. And even if that's the case, the Jets may say, yeah, you can have our second round pick next year. You're not getting our second round pick this year. Whatever the case may be, it'll get done. A deal will get done for Aaron Rodgers. And so you're going to start the Jordan Love era in Green Bay. They haven't drafted a first-round wide receiver in 65,923 years. Not going to start this year. Last year was as good as any with Treylon Burks. That's the name I was trying to recall from the Tennessee Titans. Treylon Burks out there that Rodgers vouched for, and you didn't get him. There's no way you're drafting a receiver this year. This is not a strong wide receiver draft class. And so you drafted a bunch of receivers last year. We'll see what happens with those guys, right? What you are missing, however, with a young quarterback that needs as many weapons around him as you can humanly find, what you are missing is a tight end. Robert Tonyan, gone, all right? You got nothing behind him. So not unless you count 75-year-old Mercedes Lewis. Ding! Good luck with that. You need a tight end. Best friend of a young quarterback is a young, athletic, big-time, chain-moving tight end. Enter in this next pick here for the Green Bay Packers. It fits everything that they need. Not the greatest blocker in the world, but he'll suffice. But more importantly, he's going to give their young quarterback an easy target to throw to, and he will be able to help this offense. If you don't truly have a number 1 wide receiver, which I'm not sure the Packers do at this point, even though we saw some flashes from Christian Watson last year at times, got to stay healthy, number 1, but not sure that he's anything more than a high-level 2. And none of those other guys, Romeo Doubs or any of those other receivers that you drafted last year, Torrey, none of those guys are 1s. So now the question begs, if you don't have a number 1 receiver, could you at least have a big-time tight end? I think they're going to go with that route, and that's why with the 15th overall pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers select Dalton Kincaid, tight end, Utah. So now on the clock are the Washington Commanders at 16. And so there's been a lot of scuttlebutt about what to do with this pick. Washington could just stand pat, make a selection. Washington could trade back. Don't really see a scenario in which they trade up, but trading back is definitely an option. Now, In order for that to probably happen, you're going to need some quarterbacks to be on the board, or at least one of them. If all 4 of the top quarterbacks in this year's draft class are gone and Hendon Hooker still exists, there's still a chance you can get out of this pick. Highly doubt that Washington's going to find a trade partner to get out of 16, however, but you never know. All it takes is one. Maybe there's a tight end someone's after. Maybe there's a tackle that somebody covets that's on the board at the time of Washington's selection. Well, maybe there's a corner that is sitting there that someone loves out there, and they're afraid that the Steelers, right behind Washington, will take them, and thus you got to get to 16. That's the hope if you're Washington. I don't see anybody coming up to take this pick off their hands, but I wouldn't rule it out either. But because I don't see anyone coming up and taking this off of Washington's hands, I think they make a selection at 16. And they've got a number of options here. They could go tackle. They could go corner. There are a plethora of edge rushers available, so they could go that route if they'd like. They could go tight end. Only one's been taken in this draft so far. Ultimately, I think Washington sees the writing on the wall, understands that cornerback is a massive need for this football team. It's a deep cornerback draft class. They could wait till the second round. They could take an offensive lineman now. Could take an edge rusher if they so choose. That's a pretty deep draft class of those as well, so you don't really have to hurry there. Could take a tight end. Deep draft class there. You don't have to really rush if you're interested in that position. When it's all said and done, Washington wants to knock down a need right now so that they can focus on knocking down another need potentially in the second round. And with that said, there are a plethora of options available, but this one makes the most sense. And so, with the 16th overall pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, the Washington Commanders select